Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Elevenses. Not quite sure what number we're up to, but seems to have been going for a long time now, I have to say. So I do have some good news. What have we got in the show today? Well, I've got a fair amount to get through. I'm not quite sure how much I'll make all the way through this, but we're talking about my plans for reopening in just a moment and how that's going to affect the Elevenses schedule. J&S are reopening some stores on the 1st of June. I'll go on to what they're doing. Suffolk police are appealing for information after what was described as a vintage military motorcycle was stolen. I'll give you a bit of info about that. Is it on or is it off? There's a bit of a row going on over in Ireland about whether or not road racing events are actually going ahead. I've got a story about some clothing which has just been released onto the market and some confusion over the CE labelling on an advert. And if I get time, I'll also look at what the IM are describing as a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change to transport infrastructure. So, okay, we'll crack on and get as far as we can in the 30-odd minutes that I have available today. Don't forget, if you've got a question or a comment or even a suggestion for a future show, do drop me a line. You've got the comment stream there on Facebook there where you can drop it in, and I will get back to you at the end of the live show once we've finished online with the talking. Right, okay, so provisional reopening. I've been looking at the relaxation of lockdown rules. I've been thinking hard about how and when I can return to running training courses, and I can tell you that provisionally I am going to be reopening on the 1st of June. So that'll be Monday next week. Now, you probably recall that I took a fairly early decision to close down my courses, actually before lockdown was put in place. And some people question that decision as whether it was necessary or not. Well, I think events after that proved that I was sensible to do what I did. As soon as the rules were announced, there was an exception made for those who could not work from home, and there were some suggestions that would be enough to carry on working. But as all the other guidance talked about essential work and travel, I have to say that my own feeling on this was that it was inappropriate to restart training immediately, and so I have remained closed, and that's why we are sitting here watching Elevenses as we are at the moment. I've been busily putting my Performance Bends e-course online. So what's the situation as of today? Well, unfortunately, guidance to bike trainers from the DFT and the DVSA remains almost non-existent. I'm a member of the Driving Instructors Association, and they say we cannot tell you whether to go back to work or not. But they do. One thing they do note is that the challenges for car instructors going back to teaching new drivers are very different from those facing bike trainers. Now, I have my own niche within the bike training market, and that's different again from that of the CBT and direct access instructor. My own niche is for people who already have permission to ride on the road. So basically, I'm not having to deliver CBT. I'm not having to do classroom style teaching, and I'm not having to give the training ground style instruction, although we do usually do some elements off the main road. But the point is that a CBT and DAS instructor can be at times in fairly close contact with the trainee. Now, I do it rather differently. What I would normally do on a training course is I would have an initial meet and greet session with the trainee. We'd basically sit down over a cup of coffee or something, and we'd have a natter about what we are going to do for the rest of the day. Generally speaking, that would last 30 odd minutes. It gives the trainee a chance to get used to me, lets them settle their nerves down, and we can do all the usual stuff like rush off to the toilet, sort the radio out, explain how it works and everything else, and then get kitted back up and get out on the bike. So that's probably 30 odd minutes of the course. After that, virtually everything else is done out on the road, or perhaps in a sort of a car park area where I can do some off-road training. We would have a mid-session lunch break, and while we sit down over something to eat and drink, and have a natter about what we've done over the course of the day. And then after the final road session, we would have a debrief again at the end of the session before we go on our own way. Now, it's been hard to this point to justify reopening as any kind of essential service, as I said earlier. But I think with the opening up of non-essential stores, as I'll show in a minute, J&S are reopening some of their stores. I think it's a reasonable time to start offering my training again. Now, I think there's a good reason for this as well. More and more people will be going back to work as these locations open up. People will have to go back to work. They won't have any choice in the matter. And given the pressures on public transport and the likely reluctance of many people to use it, plus the restrictions on driving to work, which are undoubtedly going into place in some city centres, more and more people will be having to think about how they're going to switch to getting to work. Now, as I've said and have been saying almost since the beginning of this lockdown, powered two-wheelers definitely have a role to play, whether that means conventional petrol engine motorcycles or whether it means electrically powered motorbikes is neither here nor there. Basically, the challenges facing you if you are on two wheels remain pretty much the same. Now, some of those people getting back into riding will be new riders. They'll have to go through the CBT procedure unless they have to hold a car license that dates from back before 2000, I think the date is. Others may well have held a license in the past but haven't ridden for a while, and there will be regular recreational riders who haven't considered the challenges of riding through a city. So I think there are a number of riders who will actually need some help to get used to doing what they're going to be doing to get to and from work. And that's the reason that I think it's time for me to get involved with bike training again. Now, as I'm a former courier, as many of you probably know, I spent 16 years as actually working as a motorcycle courier in London before I got involved in training. I've got even more experience as a trainer, and I have worked with everybody from complete novices, people doing CBT who've never ever seen a powered two-wheeler before, right up to advanced level, including some pretty advanced riders, even some police. And I also have some experience with electric motorcycles as well as my petrol engine time, obviously. So I think that makes me pretty uniquely placed to help riders who are looking to take advantage of two wheels to get to work. So let me emphasize, this is not a back to normal approach. This will be a limited restart initially, at least, and there will be significant changes to the way my training will be delivered. Excuse me. Initially, it's likely that I'll be restricting my training to a limited number of start points. Now, at the moment, I train all around London. This isn't very promising sign, is it? I've still got hay fever, that's the trouble. So, limited number of starting locations, probably in the sort of west to north London quadrant, and probably out on the North Circular Road or the M25. I'll still work that one out. But for the time being, it's unlikely that I'll be starting my courses in Kent, probably not down in Surrey, and unlikely I'll be running them out in Oxford either. That will be to be determined, however. So the diary, when I start taking the bookings again, I will be prioritising people who want to ride to work to avoid public transport. Now, as in terms of what I'm going to do to deliver the course, I will maximise the opportunity to do some work from home. Now, what that means is that as much of the contact time as I can manage, I will do via Zoom. We will have a pre-course consultation. That's the bit where I normally sit down and ask people what they want to get out of the day. I've already sent them an email. I've already asked this on the email, but it's a chance for them to have a to and fro conversation with me. And what it means is I can ask questions and draw out more information. So normally I do that on the morning when we meet. We will also have a pre-ride briefing. Now, what I will do is I'll make sure this is actually on the morning of the course. So it'll be before we each leave to meet. So the information on that briefing about how the course will proceed on the day will actually be on the morning of the course. So it'll be fresh in people's minds as best as possible. Now, on the training itself, the session will be kept down to 2 hours of training, and we won't have an intermediate lunch stop. There are two reasons for that. Obviously, it means we can avoid going into cafes and motorway services and anywhere else like that. But the second thing is that 2 hours, we should hopefully be able to avoid a loo stop. There is, one of the things that I suspect people will be reluctant to do is visit sort of public conveniences in cafes and the motorway services, which I normally aim to stop at. So if we keep the time actually on the road down, I can eliminate that from the training, hopefully. And then when we are both back at home at a convenient moment, we will hold the post-training debrief, which again I would normally do at the end of the session face to face. We can do that over Zoom. So what this basically does, it means we maximize our meeting in the open air and we minimize the time that we spend close together. We do virtually everything we're going to do actually on the bikes. So no lunch stop, bring your own drink and snack, and down to 2 hours to avoid having to stop. Now, as far as masks and things like that are concerned, I'm going to wear a mask that hopefully will satisfy trainee. I would recommend the trainee wears a mask. We'll figure out some way of doing that with helmets. I'll have a look around to see what's available in terms of masks which go under helmets. Thanks to the radio link, of course, it will be possible to do virtually all the conversation at a 2-meter and more distance, because I can talk to people over the radio. That's one of the big advantages of bike training. I don't have to have you listening to me literally through the air. I can use the air waves. So basically, that radio will be the only point of contact between us. And the plan is, what I'm going to do is the radio and the carrier bag that I keep it in will be sanitized, and I'll bring that out in a plastic bag, and then you can reach into that plastic bag, get the radio bag out. You can put your own earpieces into the radio. You will then have the radio slung over your shoulder, as I normally do. And then at the end of the course, you unplug your own earpieces from my radio. You drop the radio in its bag back into my bag, which I then seal up. I then take home, and I then wash the bag, sanitize the radio, and repeat for the next person. So you will need to bring your own earpieces. If you're not even happy to use my radio, I will provide a link to purchase your own Bluetooth setup, which I know will sync with mine. So that's my health and safety precautions. You may be asking, what can I learn in 2 hours? Well, the answer is actually quite a lot. Now, don't forget, I've had long experience of training, longer, I suspect, than the vast majority of people out there working in rider training these days. So one of the things I do know is how to focus the training in the areas it's needed. And I know how to get the message over in a quick and concise way, which means we don't simply waste time riding for the sake of it. Every meter of road that I ride when we're out on a training course has a function. So we are doing something every single second of those 2 hours of contact time. It does make it intense, but again, that's one reason I've always kept my training fairly short. And as I said, by making full use of online briefings, we can maximize the benefit of that limited contact time. I've always provided written briefing and debriefing ever since I started running these courses, but using Zoom will allow me to go a step further on this. And by screen sharing, I can cover some of the issues that we'll meet online via diagrams and even video clips. So there's a lot to be covered, which we can shift to an online format. And if you're still skeptical about 2 hours, don't forget CBT Road Ride is only 2 hours long. It can be longer, but for most people, that's all they ever get out on the road, and then they are deemed fit to ride. So we can get a lot covered in 2 hours. The key is focused training and not simply minutes and miles for the sake of it. So if you're interested, it's time to register that interest. You can do that via my Facebook page, or you can drop me a line on the contact app, which I will give you details to at the end of the show. I will be putting all this up on Facebook, and over the next day or two, it'll also go up on my website, ready for my 1st of June relaunch. If you know anybody who is considering using a bike to get to work, or has even started already, again, drop them my details and I will be more than happy to help. Prices, I haven't mentioned prices. I'm still working that out, but it will be reflecting the non-contact time, so it won't be as the same rate as my standard 5-hour courses. All right, okay, still to come. How this will affect Elevenses. We'll look at JNS opening stores, Suffolk appealing for a vintage military bike, what's going on in Ireland over road racing, and if I've got time, I will also look at the IAM's appeal for a once-in-a-lifetime change to transport infrastructure. But I think I'm probably going to be running that over to the next show. So, all right, if I go back to work, out on the bike, what's the impact on Elevenses? Well, I do want to keep running the show in some format or other, but if I start taking bookings again, then obviously there are going to be changes. The first thing to say is that I've been running these 4 times a week, and that has turned out to be a greater time commitment than I was actually anticipating. Although you're actually watching me for 30 minutes or thereabouts, the research and prep for each of these shows, just to write the content, actually takes me the best part of 2 hours. And then, of course, I've got the setup time. I've got the time that it takes me after the show to download the recording and put it up on YouTube and into other places. And there's also the time it usually takes me to answer the questions and comments that pop up at the end of the show. So in total, it probably takes me about 4 hours to deal with each show. 16 hours a week, that's actually a fair chunk of my working time. So the first priority really for me is not only to get my preps done for going back on the road on Monday, 1st of June, but also to get the e-course fully operational as well. So first things first, I will be cutting out the Monday show. So there will be no show tomorrow morning. The next show will be Wednesday. And then for the coming week, there'll be a show on Friday and there'll be a show on Sunday. From the 1st of June, I will be looking to see how bookings are coming in and how I'm going to deal with it. I hope I can still retain a live format for at least 1 day a week, but it may have to be that some of the Elevenses shows become recorded. Quite how I'm going to get that out online at 11 o'clock if it's a pre-recorded show, I'm not entirely sure at this moment. We will see. Okay, so all right, that hopefully is giving you a heads up over where I'm going with survival skills rider training over the next few weeks. So just a quick reminder, you're watching Kevin Williams here of Survival Skills, and I am delivering Elevenses to you. Now, okay, what's going on out there in the rest of the world? Well, one of the things that kind of prompted me to start thinking about this is the announcements that other businesses are starting to open up. For example, J&S, who are a big accessories outlet across the country, they've announced that they're opening their stores south of the border, at least with Scotland, on Monday, the 1st of June. And again, this is all under the lockdown exit strategy, which was laid out in a very long UK document, and where shops considered non-essential fashion and homeware retailers are allowed to reopen if safety measures have been put in place. So J&S say that they've implemented social distancing measures throughout the stores. They've marked out 2 meters on the floor. They've put PPE and screens in place for the staff who won't be able to distance 2 meters away from people they're taking payment from, presumably. There'll also be a cleaning zone for customers, although I suspect that won't stretch to polishing your motorcycle. Washing your hands is what I would imagine. They will be instituting restricted numbers within the store. They also warn of queuing in busier periods. Although they don't mention it, other suggestions within the government document include one-way systems and reduced stock handling, and that impacts on something I was going to mention in a moment. Now, J&S emphasise that the measures will rely on the customer, and they do ask people to be patient in store. Now, I do wonder how they will manage with people wanting to buy riding kits. All very well asking for a visor or a set of brake pads or something like that, because you can just be literally handed the wrapped package. But what if you want to try something on? Particularly something like a helmet. I'm sure that many customers would be very wary of trying out anything that's on the shelf. I certainly would be at the moment. Okay, the risk of transmission of COVID-19 from surfaces does seem fairly low, and it does seem that aerosols are the real problem, i.e. what we're breathing out and coughing and spluttering and that kind of thing. But personally, I wouldn't be trying clothing on in a store anytime soon. I have no idea how they're planning on getting around that problem. One of the guidelines again suggests that stock is seen on the shelves, but then the the packaged item is delivered from the storeroom to a collection point, and so what's on the shelf doesn't need to be taken away by the customer. But again, if you're trying a helmet, you could be trying half a dozen helmets on before you even find one that's near to fitting. So I really don't know how that's going to work. How many small businesses, motorcycle businesses generally, are going to reopen? Well, good question. The British Chambers of Commerce report that they have just 37% of businesses have reported back to them as being able to implement guidance and fully restart. 45% believe they can partially restart. So something like almost 1 in 10 do not believe they can comply with the current guidance. And of course, high-risk businesses like hairdressers and cafes are still closed at this point. Right, okay. So, all right, anything else to talk about today? Well, Suffolk police are appealing for information after a vintage motorcycle was stolen. Vintage military motorcycle, they described it as. The bike was nicked from Bury St Edmunds, somewhere between 11:30 on Thursday night, that's May the 14th, and 9:30 on Friday morning. So it's taken a little bit of a while for the report to come out, which is disappointing. The motorcycle itself is a green Armstrong MT 500, and the registration is C736, M for Mike, D for Delta, S for Sugar. And the machine had apparently been left secure outside the address. Now, the bike is highly distinctive. There were very few of these actually sold because they were built for the military. So the only ones that came out were sort of army surplus, as it were. So they're very distinctive. They're sort of olive green color. Big single cylinder 500cc engine, kickstart only. I seem to remember they were an absolute bugger to start as well, with no electric foot. A couple of couriers I knew bought them, didn't really get on with them, as I recall. It was a Rotax engine. It wasn't the most user-friendly bike in the world. Now, describing it as vintage is perhaps pushing the boat out a bit. There can't be a huge market for a bike like this, quite frankly. It's hardly likely to be broken down for spares simply because nobody will actually be wanting them. And I doubt there's much of the way of interest in the machine itself. Possibly it's sort of been shoved around a corner somewhere, or it's already in a container being shipped out of the country somewhere where they're not quite so fussy about what they're riding. But anybody who does have information about the machine, you can contact the Suffolk police on their website. Okay, so over in Ireland, what's been going on out there? Well, the road racing season over there should be in full swing. We should have had the Northwest 200 just a few days ago, which is a hugely popular event which pulls in spectators only, second only to the Isle of Man TT. But the road racing in Ireland has been shut down. A statement issued by Motorcycling Ireland, in fact, said back on March 19th that all 2020 events cancelled for the foreseeable future. And basically, there now is a bit of a row going on between Motorcycling Ireland and the Cookstown District Motorcycle Club, because they announced a couple of days ago that they were continuing with their planning to run the Cookstown 100 road race, which would happen on the 11th and 12th of September this year. Motorcycling Ireland are not happy with this, and they are saying that this is against their guidance, and they do not have the authority or the support of the Motorcycle Union of Ireland to promote these events. To quote their General Secretary, a chap called Sean Bissett, he said, "We feel that they are bringing our sport unnecessarily into the public spotlight when the governments of Ireland are still trying to keep this epidemic under control. We have accepted that as far as 2020 is concerned, that our motorcycle sport will be not be adding any pressure to the various health and public departments throughout Ireland, and would hope the Ulster Centre follows that lead as we look forward to joint planning for 2021. So the Ulster Centre also issued a statement, and they say they've contacted the Cookstown Club as to their views, and David McAllister, who their secretary, has said that his own personal opinion is when people cannot access cancer treatment or have normal hospital appointments, and while race medical personnel may not be available, it would be somewhat irresponsible for any club to organise a race meeting at this moment in time. So the upshot of this is that Motorcycle Ireland licence holders, in other words, the racers, could end up being banned from attending this proposed event, even if it does go ahead. So whether it will or not is still a moot point, but obviously the authorities are not very happy about that. Right, so just a reminder, if you can't ride, you can still read. My books are still available via my publisher's site there, and the Lulu Spotlight Survival Skills address is trundling across the screen as I speak. Final item, I am going to run out of time. I won't have time to recover the IM's position, but I'll do that on Wednesday. Now, Paul Varnes, who I know is watching interestedly, I posted a point about some confusion over standards for CE clothing. We've had a new, I keep calling it a new, I should probably call it a revised standard for CE clothing. The A, AA and AAA rating system has replaced the old level 1, level 2 system. Now, what kicked this off was an ad that dropped through my virtual letterbox the other day for a pair of new inexpensive RST jackets. I keep mentioning RST, it's probably because they are doing the most promotion. That's why I keep getting their ads. But when I glanced at it, it caught my attention because it said these new jackets, the Pilot and Pilot Air jackets, are CE level 1 rated with a range of level 1 armor. Now, if you followed the series on CE clothing, you'll know that level 1, level 2 standard's been superseded, as I've just said, by the A, AA and AAA standard. So I was a bit surprised to see a new garment being listed as with the older level 1 approval, particularly as the level 1 is a much higher standard of abrasion resistance. It's far, far tougher than the A rating. And the fact that most of the new garments that are appearing are being A rated only. There are just a couple that are AA, and apart from leather, I've yet to see a AAA garment apart from the one produced by Hideout. So I was just interested to see what the real case was. So I went off to the RST website, and then I realized that in fact it's an error on the advert itself, because the jacket is genuinely only A rated. So whether this is a slip of the pen or typewriter or whatever, I don't know. Presumably it is. Somebody's probably just typed that out without even realizing what they've typed. But do check what you're getting. Buyer beware, caveat emptor. Remember, check the standard on the website, but do check the garment itself for the labeling. It must have the labeling on to comply. If you want my advice, unless you spend your time riding around at 20 miles an hour in the city centre, I would put the A-rated kit back on the shelf myself, and because you will get as much protection from a decent quality denim jacket. If you want minimum standards of protection, I would go and look at the AA standard as a minimum. All right, okay, so we've done our 30 minutes. I didn't get around to the IM advice, but I will have a look at that on Wednesday. So don't forget, I haven't actually modified my little banner that runs across the bottom of the screen, but do remind yourself that there will be no show tomorrow, Monday, as I cut back to 3 shows next week. What happens after Monday, 1st of June, I am still to determine, because I am going to be reopening for training as of Monday, 1st of June in a limited fashion. I explained it earlier in the show in case you missed it. but I will also put this up on the website. So, okay, that's it for today. Don't forget, if you have enjoyed the show, if you've enjoyed the past shows, you can show your support by heading over to my Ko-fi page. You will also find that if you do support me, it opens up access to well over 100 writing articles that I've written in the past for Facebook. I will continue to provide that free posts on Facebook. But this gives you access to an enormous back catalogue that goes back to 2014. If you become a subscriber by making a monthly payment of as little as £3 a month, that was just the price for coffee, in fact, that access opens up to the subscriber content, which includes my e-course, which, as I say, is going up as I speak. There's a significant chunk of it already up there, but I'm putting more up, and I will get more up over the course of the week and hopefully get it finished next week. All right, okay, so with that very positive news that I am planning on going back out on the road training as of Monday, 1st of June, I will thank you all once again for tuning in to Elevenses. I thank you for past support. It's been much appreciated, and hopefully we're beginning to see a way clear to go riding again properly. Right, bye for now.